What if I hold my paper like this? There's something about holding it that's allowing me to talk.
It's not in the shot. I don't
Okay,
think it's-
that's kind of, I'm not even necessarily going to be, just there's something about knowing it's here.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny, but.
If you hear it rattle at some point, then you know. Just hold it
Right.
still.
Yeah, no, I think I'm just going to be like this.
Sure.
And if I want to cut and just take a glance, is that okay? Do I just
Yes.
say? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Don't worry about it. We'll make it work.
Then Brandon, what do you, for this camera here, not this one, what do you want me to do with this pack?
I'll just go ahead and pop that on.
All right.
Alright, and then when it turns, when it seems solid, we should be good.
Well, the good thing was there was no traffic this morning.
Yeah, it's early enough.
No, it's smooth drive.
Yes. Okay, good.
So I'm Alan Schoenfeld. I'm a prof at Berkeley, and I'm really interested in finding out about what you're going to do today.
And I'm Lauren Hofmayer, and I'm a third grade teacher at Lighthouse Community Charter School in Oakland, California. And I'm really excited to talk with you today about the work my students will be doing.
Great. Why don't you start by telling me a little bit about yourself and your background, and then we'll go on to hear about your kids.
Sure. So I grew up in Orinda, California, right over the hill from Oakland, and I really noticed the difference between the kind of school that I went to and the school that many of the students in Oakland are going to. So that's what got me really interested in working in Oakland in the first place, was to give the students the same opportunities that I had growing up. I went to Stanford University and got my undergraduate in psychology and my master's degree in elementary education. And since then, I've been teaching third grade. This is my 4th year of teaching third grade.
Cool.
Yeah.
And what can you tell me about your kids? We'll see them on tape,
Yeah.
but let's have a preview.
Yeah, so my students are amazing. I'm very excited. I'm going to be able to work with them in 4th grade next year, so we're really going to be able to get to know each other even better. One of the things that I've really been inspired by with my students this year is their persistence, really working hard and thinking about problems that are challenging, grappling with novel situations. So that's one thing that's been really inspiring working with them. I have a diverse class of students from different backgrounds, and it's really interesting to see them work together and come together on challenging work. So.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Can you tell me something about the lesson you have planned for today?
So for today, we're going to be building on the students' prior knowledge of multiplication. They've been building arrays and having other conceptual work with multiplication. And today we're going to be I'm going to be presenting them with a problem that has 3 factors, a multiplication problem with 3 factors, and the focus is going to be on thinking about the associative property and how what will happen if you multiply those 3 problems together, or those 3 numbers together in different orders. Will the answer be the same?
Cool. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the framework that I'm going to be using to think about your lesson, and then ask you some questions about that.
Okay.
So I've been studying math classrooms for a number of years, and it turns out that there are a few things that happen that, when they happen well, really produce powerful learners. And there are 5 dimensions to powerful mathematics classrooms, and what I'm going to do is tell you very briefly about them and then ask you about how you're thinking about each one for today's class.
Sure.
Okay. So the first, not surprisingly, if you're doing a math lesson, is the quality of the mathematics. Okay. In classrooms that are dull, drying, reciting facts, there's not much room for interesting learning. In classrooms where The math is really rich and interesting. It lives up to the Common Core standards, not just the content parts, but also the practices parts. And you've talked about that. You said you see your kids persevering in problem solving. Those kinds of mathematical practices. Then there's room for really neat stuff to happen. But there's a lot more because it's all about the kids and how they engage with the mathematics. So the question is, do the kids have a chance to engage with the math in powerful ways? We call it the formal term is cognitive demand. The term we really think about is productive struggle. Do the kids get to do some mathematical work, use and build their mathematical muscles? So they can't be spoon-fed, then they're not really digging into the math. They can't be at sea. So the question will be, how are you going to set things up so your kids are in the right zone? Okay. The third dimension is classroom access or equity. You've got a room full of kids who may be all over the place along a whole number of different dimensions. And the question is, how do you think about making sure there's powerful mathematics that each kid, given what that kid knows and can do, can get into in meaningful ways? Okay. And that leads into the fourth dimension. Formal name is agency, authority, and identity. Agency meaning the kids have a sense of themselves as kids who can do math. Authority meaning I can actually talk math and be recognized as someone who can. And that, of course, feeds into who they see themselves as doers of mathematics. And then the fifth dimension is formative assessment. That's a jargon term. What it really means is, can you figure out where the kids are in such a way that the activities you have them engaging in are right for them, meet the kids where they are, so that the kids are productively engaged. And the research says if a classroom is powerful along those 5 dimensions, those kids are going to turn out to be dynamite mathematical thinkers. So that's the background. And now let me go back and start with number 1, the mathematics. How are you thinking about the mathematics that the kids are going to engage in, and what the mathematical riches are, what you're looking for by way of their getting their heads around the mathematical content?
So originally when I was planning this lesson, I was thinking about doing more of a direct instruction lesson because this is kind of a tricky concept and I really wanted to make sure that they were going to be successful. I want all my students to be successful. And then after the lesson that I taught yesterday, which was a little bit more direct instruction, I noticed that the students weren't having the kinds of rich conversations that I wanted them to be having when they were going back to do their independent work. And even on the carpet, I just got that feeling that they were kind of waiting for me to tell them what to do. And I just thought to myself, this is an opportunity. Tomorrow will be an opportunity for me to, I did some reflecting last night and I thought, okay, I'm gonna change it up a little bit and make this more of an open lesson. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna present them with a real world context. I'm gonna say, for example, your parents are gonna pay you $3 to work, to wash the dishes for 7 days for 2 weeks, right? So they have 3 factors and they have to think about, how am I going to even begin to approach that problem? And that's literally how I'm going to present it to them. I'm going to say, so it's 3 days, or $3 times 7 days times 2 weeks. How do you think we might start to solve this problem? Take a minute to think about that. So they're going to think about it, and then I'm going to ask a student to come on up and give it a try, and I'm going to step back. So I'm going to be a facilitator, and I'm going to really encourage that student to give it their best try. And if they're feeling stuck, right, or they need some support, I'm going to ask them to turn to their classmates and see if anybody can help build on that idea. If they're really stuck, I'll jump in and kind of add a little bit of my own, but today I really want to see the students do the heavy lifting and the thinking for themselves, but also with support and scaffolding. So not making it easier, but
That's
yeah.
really cool.
Yeah.
It's actually a very hard move for a teacher to make in going from something close to direct instruction to something where a lot more of the action happens between the kids. Because when you first open things up, all of a sudden you're seeing all of these things that your kids don't have.
Right.
And your temptation is to go, I got to fix that. I got to fix that. Oh my God, this student has this problem. This student has this problem. First of all, it's so much simpler when I was doing the telling. Second, there are so many things to fix at once, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
The teacher I worked with in Berkeley Unified talked about it felt like playing whack-a-mole. Okay?
Yeah.
Problem erupts here, I go bam and whack it, but then a problem erupts here.
Right.
And it does seem really hard. The interesting thing is that in a more open lesson, there is a period of messiness.
Yeah.
But then the teacher doesn't have to solve all the messes.
Right.
If the kids are good at talking to each other, then the kids can do a lot of that sorting out, a lot of that fixing, and then the teacher can help orchestrate things and pull them together.
Correct.
And it's actually much more meaningful to the kids to have done that sorting out than to hear it from the teacher. And it's also much better at building their understandings. I had the experience as a graduate student, I'm sure every teacher, every parent has. I was in a classroom where the teacher was a wonderful lecturer. He gave this absolutely gorgeous lecture. We walked out thinking, we understand everything. And then I couldn't do homework problem 1.
Right.
He was the one who did it, I wasn't, and it didn't work. So it's harder, it's messier for your kids to be engaged, and it's sometimes like a parent watching a kid wobble off on a bike. But the only way the kid's going to get there and be able to ride the bike is if you let go.
Yep.
Okay. So let's talk about the wobbling and letting go part.
Yeah.
That's the dimension of cognitive demand or productive struggle.
Right.
Where are you seeing your kids as potentially really having to think and struggle? What kinds of ways are you thinking about providing them with support for them?
So I think one of the things that's going to feel the most challenging for a lot of my students on these problems is making sense of the problem, knowing where to start, right? Reading the problem and saying, okay, well, I know that this is going to be a multiplication problem, right? And I've done some work with multiplying 3 numbers together, but really even just that conceptual understanding of multiplying 2 numbers together for some students is still something they're working on. So thinking about how do I break this problem down to make it more manageable? And one thing that if a student is struggling and isn't sure where to start, one scaffold I'm going to provide is let's just think about 2 of the factors first, right? What 2 factors are going to make sense here? So for example, if your mom is going to pay you $3 a day for 7 days, how much are you going to make in 1 day? Okay, so like act it out, right? How much are you going to make in 1 day? $3. How about 2 days? Another $3. How about 3 days? Another $3. So we're getting toward that conceptual understanding of multiplication as repeated addition, right? Can add those 3's together. So breaking it down, focusing on 2 factors, and then once they've got that piece, then adding in that 3rd factor. Okay, so this happens for 3 weeks or whatever. Now how much money are you going to make? So really, really breaking it down and making it into a real life situation. So for the kids who are struggling, that's kind of the way I'm going to do the questioning in independent work time. If they're ready for that, if they're getting that, then I'm going to push their thinking a little bit. I'm going to say, okay, so you solved it this way. Do you think if you put the numbers, like what if you thought about this problem in a different order, right? And you grouped the numbers differently. Are you still going to get the same answer? What do you think, right? Let's give it a try. And so pushing them to think about that.
Okay. Going back to the first one, so it's a complex problem with 3 different things that
Right.
you're going to multiply. One thing to do for the kids who are having a challenge is to say, let me scaffold it for you by doing 1 day. Another thing that you might try is to say, is there an easier problem that you might do?
Right.
This was so many dollars per day per week. That's not going to work. See, there's a nice flub they'll edit out.
Okay.
They were little minor ones, but that
Yeah.
was one that was just going nowhere.
That's okay.
Okay.
No worries.
So, you've got this problem with 3 different parts. There's the number of dollars per day, the number of days per week, the number of weeks. And sometimes if you just say, is there a simpler problem you might be able to get your head around? Kid might say, maybe I could figure it out for 1 week. If not, and you scaffold, then you can also say, this is something that's a useful technique in general. When we have really complex problems, sometimes it's a good thing to start by taking part of it and figuring out. And then you're building out some of the problem-solving parts of the Common Core standards too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. But wherever there's an opportunity that you can pose a question that has a chance that the kid can do some of the math instead of you're telling them, then you're helping them build up that kind of mathematical sense making.
Mm-hmm. And if I ask them that question, like, is there a way to make this into an easier problem, and they aren't sure, is that when I step in, or is there more questioning I can do to try to get at that?
It depends on the situation and the kid.
Right.
And there are various ways that teachers deal with that. One that I've seen a lot of teachers do, although, do you have the kids for the whole day or half day, or do you just have them for math?
The whole day.
The whole day. Okay, then this particular middle and high school trick doesn't work, which is, yesterday someone in my fourth period class said this. What do you think about that? Or it could be, if you've been doing this for a while, Maria said this, or something. What do you think of that as a strategy?
We talk a lot about misconceptions and mistakes that other students have made, but and they're actually comfortable with it being them now, which is great.
Yeah.
It's very exciting.
That really is. The most powerful mathematics classes are not the ones that are about answer getting, not the ones that are about the kids going, I got it. But the classes in which kids are engaged in mathematical sense making. And if you're trying to do that, that means you're going to goof some of the time. And that's the way it is. If you didn't goof, it means you're not working on hard enough problems.
Right.
So when they can take ownership of their successes and their mistakes on the way to the successes, that's really exciting.
Yeah.
Okay. So you've got a bunch of kids at a wide variety of levels of mathematical proficiency, of linguistic proficiency. How are you thinking about the handholds in today's lesson for all of those kids so that the kids can engage in meaningful ways?
So one of the things I've been thinking about is really providing students with opportunities to talk to each other, both during the lesson, when we're on the carpet together, and then also when they're back at their seats, for students to not just be expected to do all this work on their own, but to really be able to use each other for support. So when they go back to their seats, to be able to talk about the problems and talk about the different ways they're strategizing about them. I can also, of course, walk around and ask those facilitative questions. I think it's going to be very important, though, that the modeling be as clear as possible while still being student-led, which is one of the things I'm honestly a little bit nervous about. It's going to be interesting to see how that goes. I want students to be ready when they go back to their seats to tackle the first problem and not feel like they're just going to sit there and stare at it, right? So really thinking about let's tap into the strategies that we've been working on all year in terms of making sense, right? It's not always just going to be drawing a picture, making an array. It may be acting the problem out, right? I want students to feel like they have access to like a toolkit, right, of things that they know how to do to start that first problem. So for the students that are struggling, that's definitely where I'm going to go. Say, what strategies have we talked about this year? Is it drawing a picture? Is it acting it out? Is it an array? An array is what we practiced yesterday, drawing arrays. So those are some of the things we're going to think about.
That kind of sense making is really important. One of the things that used to happen when I went to school, and probably for God knows how many years after, was the kids walked in knowing whatever I do today is going to be what other technique I was shown within the past 48 hours.
Right.
And then I get the answer and then I'm done. And that's not the mathematical game that we want to play. We really want to develop kids as mathematical sense makers, which means they have a whole set of tools at their disposal. And sometimes it's acting out, and sometimes it's drawing a picture, and sometimes it's making a formal representation, an array or something like that. And all of those are parts of the toolkit, as you said. And the student who walks out with a sense of, I've got these things I can do, and when I encounter a problem, I've got a set of tools I might use.
A novel problem, right? I mean, I think that's the important thing, is that you're not always going to see the same kind of problem every time. And I really want kids to be able to look at something they've never seen before. I mean, that's what the assessments that they took this year looked like, right? A lot of the problems were ones they'd never seen before, but I would like them to feel like they have that toolkit.
Yeah. I couldn't have said it better. And the thing about the kind of math instruction I got when I was a student was that I was prepared to solve precisely the kinds of problems they taught me how to solve.
Right.
And then I didn't have any tools for new things, so my math knowledge essentially stayed inside the classroom. And what we'd really like is kids who are mathematical thinkers who can use what they understand for new stuff.
Right.
Okay. So let's turn to the dimension with the formal name of agency, authority, identity.
Yeah.
Which is basically about kids coming to see themselves as powerful mathematical thinkers. And how are you thinking about the opportunities that today's class might provide your students to do that?
So as I said before, the students are going to be running the first part of this lesson. I mean, I'm going to set up the problem, I'm going to present them with a situation, and then I'm going to I'm going to open it up to the students. So automatically they see this as this is their problem to solve. I'm not solving it for them. And I think that's going to scare some of them. And some of them may be doing other things when they realize that's what's going on. I'm going to really try to draw them all back in. Like, no, this is your conversation to have. I'm just here to listen and facilitate when I can. Or when I'm needed. And so that's huge, I think, just having them realize that. We've been working on talk moves, right? Listening to each other, responding to each other's ideas. That's something that my class is definitely still working on, and I think you're going to see that today. I am going to have to be doing some facilitating around, okay, maybe if you're not sure, you can ask somebody to clarify, right? So I am going to be, you'll hear me doing some of that today, I think. But definitely them running the conversation and building off each other's ideas. When they go back to their seats, another way that they're going to show agency and is it authority, autonomy? Sorry, now I made my
build positive identities.
They're going to be building positive identities and autonomy at their seats by talking to each other about their math thinking. And once again, me as a facilitator, not telling them how to do things, but helping them build that understanding that, no, you actually do have that toolkit and you do have these strategies that you can try. And then coming back for the closing conversation is going to be really interesting to see, okay, so here's some student work. Like my plan is to put up somebody's work. My original, I mean, and this might change, right? As the lesson goes on, I might change the way I decide to have the summarizing conversation. But my plan is to choose a student who's really grappled with making sense of the problem and they've solved it one way, and say, okay, so-and-so solved the problem this way. Is there a different way that we could group the numbers, and would we still get the same answer? Did somebody solve this problem a different way? And let's take a look at that. And then once again, have the students really run that conversation.
Cool.
Yeah.
There are really lots of opportunities for building agency, authority, identity, those three things.
Yeah.
In particular, having the kids present their own thinking.
Yeah.
Phil Darrow, who's one of the authors of the Common Core Standards, has said that if he had one measure, he was only allowed to count one thing in a classroom that would predict the success of that classroom in producing powerful thinkers. It would be the number of times that a student had a chance to say a second sentence of explanation in a row. Because it's all about the kids doing the mathematics and then developing a sense of themselves as people who can do math. So that presentation at the end, where the kids are presenting their own math and then there's a compare and contrast, is a really rich opportunity. You said it's probably going to be scary for the kids. I bet you it's going to be scary for you too.
It is. I'm excited though. I am. I think this is all very exciting. I'm not afraid of it being messy. I'm anticipating that it's going to be messy, and I'm excited to just see what happens.
Yeah. It takes a while to get used to it because you're actually leaving your comfort zone at times when you do that. But once it becomes a habit, it's invigorating. It's hard,
sure.
but it's hard to go back.
I'm sure it is. Yeah.
So the last dimension is formative assessment, which has to do with knowing where the kids are and meeting them where they are. Just to get the types of assessment out on the table, which you know, but I'm saying for the tape. Okay. There are two kinds of assessment: formative assessment and summative assessment. Summative assessment is the test we give at the end of the year or the end of the unit. And for the most part, it tells us what the kids know when it's too late to do anything about it. So it serves a formal bureaucratic purpose, but it doesn't help the kids. Formative assessment is figuring out what the kids know when you have the opportunity to do something about it so that you can meet them where they are and help pull them forward. So, and every lesson provides opportunities to hear what the kids are saying and to do something about it. And I wondered what you were thinking about the opportunities for formative assessment in this lesson.
So there are lots of opportunities for formative assessment in this lesson. I definitely am going to be doing it right off the bat when they're doing their conversation at the beginning, right? To get a sense of which students, when they're turning and talking, which students are able to think about not only do I know what 2 times 6 is, right? But making sense of what is the 2, what is the 6, right? Is it days? Is it number? Is it days? Is it money? Is it weeks, right? And really grappling with the making sense part of it. So I'm gonna clue into who's got it and is ready to be pushed to that next level, and who's going to need that support. Maybe who do I need to check in with first when they go back to their seats to start the independent work. Again, the closing conversation is going to provide great information when I'm thinking about what's the next lesson in this sequence going to look like. When they're starting to have that conversation about, okay, so are the students really still at a place where they need to just grapple with making sense of a problem? And which students are ready to start to think about, okay, I've made sense of this problem, how can I think about ordering or grouping the numbers in a different way? The standard that I'm focusing on today is really an aspect of it is the associative property, right? And knowing that numbers can be grouped in different orders and get the same answer. So I'm going to be looking for which students are still trying to build that conceptual understanding of multiplication, which students have that conceptual understanding but are maybe grappling more with making sense of a problem, and then noticing who's ready to be pushed on to think about grouping the numbers in a different order.
Great. I'm excited. I can't wait to see the lesson.
I'm excited too. Thank you.
Cool. Well done.
Thanks.
Well done.
Very good.
I didn't need my notes, but it felt good to hold them. All right, I really need to go to the bathroom. I had a lot of coffee.
Take that off the camera.
Okay.
Oh yeah, let me unmic.